full company audit through a digitalized AI process is something that we're seeing, and it is transforming the industry. And I think that's something, you know, to look out for.
Perfect, guys. We have Naren here on the podcast. Naren, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I mean, we originally talked much earlier on about having you on. We went through like a hiatus, like 3-4 months, where we paused all podcast production, trying to figure out a better setup, what to use, how to run a better virtual environment.
Yeah,
man, when COVID first hit, like it hit us like a brick, right? Like literally the weekend the weekend the pandemic was called, we had 5 like amazing guests lined up, like back to back. We had a full crew. We set up a stage and like a 4 camera, like 4K camera setups, like 3 of them, HD audio. We have an audio technician on set. Like we had a whole set, a portable set that we would take to like innovation centers we're partnered with and run it there, right? And it was a blast. Like we built this like portable like talk show that we can take to innovation centers, partner with them, have their them in the background, bring high quality guests on, provide high quality video, and really enjoyed that. But man, like we had to last minute cancel everything.
Geez.
Right. Yeah. The Sunday was a film date. On the Monday, the global pandemic was called officially. Right. That week, I moved into my new house where we are now. Right. And I had to cancel all furniture shipments. And for about 2 months, through 3 months, me and my wife, we were just living off the floor because we had no furniture. We had a mattress on the ground, and only furniture we had was a sofa and 2 TVs that sat on the floor because we didn't have any mounts or anything.
And more TVs than
to sit. And legit, I'm like, how do we pivot apart like this, like from going from an HD 4 quality, multi-person, like in-person setup? How do I transfer all that to virtual? Right. Had no clue. So started doing Instagram live videos. Started like experimenting on different channels, looking for different ways, right? We went from like 4K videos on YouTube to Instagram live. Figured a way to like record Instagram live. Realize it's super choppy, really bad quality. We go from 4K quality on YouTube to now having like 320p and a grainy like Instagram like capture. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, how do we do this better?
Right.
But you know what? Everyone is dealing with that. Now, how do you communicate better? How do you figure things out? Right. But like, I think the cool thing is this 2020 has gone by in a flash. Like we're at the end of 2020. It feels like last month all this stuff started.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So. But here we are now, and we kind of sort of figured it out. Right. Like people are meeting. We're getting business done. We're getting things. Things are happening. Right. And it's actually happening at a faster pace because
it's true.
We're not traveling across the city anymore. We're not stuck in Toronto gridlock. Right. We're just like, okay, you want to connect? We connect. We talk. We put the phone down. We go, chill with our significant other, have lunch, come back, and we're on another call.
It's true.
Yeah. How has the pandemic affected you?
Yeah, great question. So I think for us, it really came pretty suddenly, like you said, right? So in a lot of ways, I don't think anybody coming into 2020 anticipated anything like this, right? So we started off, I think I saw a meme the other day where it was like January, February, quarantine, and then it's December, right? And that's really what 2020 has been. And I think, for me, and maybe my situation's been a little bit different because I've always, so I'm based in Ottawa, Ontario. So, so I grew up in Toronto, and then a number of years I moved here. And for me, I've always kind of had the remote world in a lot of ways. So I've worked remotely for a long time. So, but I think the biggest change is I was traveling a lot, though. So I used to, a lot of my client base is still in Toronto. And so very familiar with Toronto and things like that. So that suddenly stopped. And so what happened there, it became a case of I was still kind of used to it, but everyone else, kind of adapting to this new normal, right? So so clients, how are we going to meet clients? How are we going to we deal with the government, right? So how are we going to do that? How are we going to deal with my colleagues, right? There's so many touch points that we have on a day-to-day. So the biggest thing was that connection, right? So just having that ability to, how are you going to, and beyond the work world, just your personal experiences. Like how are you going to stay connected? I think that's the biggest thing. And for me, and quickly it became a case of, getting on the tools, like you said, switching to things like Zoom. And luckily for us at work, we rolled out Microsoft Teams right around that time. And actually it was an expedited thing that wasn't supposed to happen, but slowly I think we adapted, and what it became down to is, how do we make things work for people? How do you make life easier for people? Using these tools, how do we leverage these tools? How do we find different times, to get in touch with people, make it more convenient for them? So like you were saying off the top, it wasn't just you and I that the pandemic affected. It affected everybody, right? And so we were all kind of growing through it. There were some growing pains in the beginning, but I think that's been the biggest kind of thing, is how we've kind of come together. And I know we talk about it, later on. We, on our team, we had, I was talking to them today, we had a number of co-op students, and you could just imagine, and I was a co-op student a number of years ago. It's like you're coming into the working world and you're at home. Right, you're not in the office, you're not meeting people, right? And we had a lot of new hires as well in our team, and for them, just hearing their experiences around joining a company in the pandemic was kind of was very eye-opening in a lot of ways. Yeah. So I think that's been the biggest thing. It's like we've grown together, we found new ways to make those connections, and we've kind of settled in, right? In a lot of ways, coming into next year, I think we feel better about what we've been able to do. Is it perfect? No, but I think we've found a way to make it work. So I think that's been a lot of, in terms of the way the pandemic has affected me and how we've kind of learned and grown together. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the work you do. In Thornton LLP, you're like a large scale accounting firm, but you work with a lot of startups, help them navigate, all their financials, as well as help them with these applications, right, to grants and different government programs.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a question I get a lot of the times when I'm talking to companies. It's like, yeah, you guys are a big accounting firm, global firm. Do you actually work with small companies and work with startups? And actually, the answer is yes. And the reason for that is when you look at these programs, when you look at these government programs, that's who they're designed for, right? They're not for the big guys. And yeah, the big companies do benefit from these programs at a lower scale. The SMEs, the startups, these are the companies that really benefit from these programs. What these programs are designed for. So it's kind of a nice piece of the puzzle, where we have this group, and in a lot of ways we're very different from our other sort of other groups at Grant Thornton in a lot of ways, because we're not just accountants. My background is computer science, right? And I've got my colleagues we've got engineers, mechanical engineers, computer engineers, others that have done manufacturing. So we've got all these sort of industry specific folks on our team, and we've got the financial folks on our team. And so we've got this nice complementary team that can go out to the market and help companies. And really, that's where the interest in startups came to me, is when I started Grant Thornton. I've been here closing in on 6 years. What I found was there is an opportunity to play in this space. There's an opportunity to help companies, and they're the guys that need the help, right? So when you think about like how do you scale up a company, one of the things for Grant Thornton is that's what we want to do. We want to help companies scale. We want to help companies grow, and really it's private business, it's owner managed companies that you'll see as a focus. So while we are a big player and we can help the big guys, you'll find that we really play in this space more so, and our group is just really a nice example of that. So
so I mean, you talked about this, right? Like people saying you're a big firm, a global firm. Why work with small companies? Why work with startups? What is the value of startups in your eyes, and from the company side?
Yeah, from the company side, it's great from the perspective of what we call relationship building, right? So there's some real value that we can provide to companies in the early stages. So, establishing yourself with a firm like ours where we can help you. And in the beginning, it might just be a program like the SR&ED SR&ED program, right? Because that's an easy program for companies to access. But down the line, you're going to have other needs, right? So as companies scale, you might be looking at other jurisdictions. You might be looking to expand into the U.S. or international markets, and we can be there when you need that help. So the nice thing about us is, if you get going from the beginning, you've started to build that relationship with us as a firm. You know who we are, you know what we can do, and the services start to come, right? So there's an opportunity to do things like the government funding programs. You might need help with, bookkeeping. You might need, every company that incorporates needs a tax filing, right? So there's kind of it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So, in a lot of ways, so companies take advantage of those services from the beginning. And for us, it's really an opportunity to hold their hand in a lot of ways, right? Hold companies' hands as they grow, because they're going to have things. And the way we like to position it is, we don't see ourselves as a, here we're providing a service, but we're almost we want to be seen as that sort of mentor. We want to be seen as that trusted advisor, right? And how do you build that trust? It starts from the beginning. It starts by, saying that, when you need us, we'll be there. And it's not just hey, we're gonna start charging you for things. Sometimes it's a conversation, right? Sometimes it's a, hey, what do you need in your business right now? And that's kind of the mentality that we have. So when they see that, for startups, when they see like a firm like ours behind them, there's that, that reputation, they feel better, and then we feel better because we can help them. So
yeah, definitely. And like having such a brand name behind you definitely gives you kind of a validation when you're like, especially a small little firm, saying, wow, I have these people behind me. It gives you confidence, gives you a little bit of bragging rights, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it gives you
like credibility. Yeah.
Credibility, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's definitely value in that kind of service, right? Like, especially a large scale company that can provide that kind of stable kind of framework to operate in, right? It's there. But like, what would you say when comparing to like a smaller boutique firm who's more nimble, right? Like, I like this is my confusion at this, right? You assume smaller, like nimble companies could do that, but problem is startups are notoriously like awful clients because they don't have money.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
I mean, they can't pay up front. They can't pay for services.
Yeah.
Sometimes they run out of cash flow, all this kind of thing.
Right.
Smaller firms can't really take the risk of working with startups, especially in intensive ways. Whereas for a larger firm, it kind of makes sense, right? You can like seed the industry, work with like, 10, 20, 30 companies a quarter. And then most of those companies might fail, might not go anywhere, might get stuck for a while.
Yeah.
But even if a handful, within a few years, become like, bigger brands, bigger things, they're going to remember you. And because they work from the beginning, set up the foundations for them, it's easier for them to keep working with you. And I see that's like the business case for what you guys do.
Yeah,
right?
I often liken it to like a lottery ticket. Like a lot of times, our startup is a lottery ticket because you've got 10, and maybe 2 of them make it big. But as a firm, we have that ability, I think, in a lot of ways to, are we gonna, in some cases, we're not making a lot of money, in some of these companies in the early stages, and we know that kind of going in, but we're able to absorb some of that. A lot of what we say when we get involved with a company in their first year, second year, it's a lot of education, it's a lot of ramp up, it's a lot of hand holding, and we know that kind of going in, right? And there's that appetite for doing that, and we've seen some great success stories come out of companies where we were there in the beginning, and we've seen them grow, we've seen them raise money, we've seen them go through seed rounds, and we've seen them they actually take on additional services from us because they need that support, right, when they scale. So that's great to see. That's what we'd like to see from all of the startups. But like you said, it's a bit of a game sometimes. But for us, we are able to play in that space. So there's sometimes that notion of, you're maybe not able to compete with some of the smaller players and things like that, and that's not true. Like a lot of times we're trying to cater some of our offerings to work with the startups, right? And factoring that in, and maybe there's some things that we can do in the first year and second year, and then when you guys are doing better, and then you can take on more with us, and there's that kind of agreement that we have sometimes in place. So I think that what's the show, the Mythbusters or whatever, it's like, you guys don't work with startups, right? You guys don't work with firms. And a lot of my conversations are to kind of dispel that notion sometimes. It's like, no, it's a different model, but we can be there. And the nice thing is, it's not just us. Like, we've got other service lines, we've got other things that we can offer, and that's what we can bring to the table. So and we hope that the companies like that approach. We hope that they can see the value of working with someone like us from the get-go, and not having to start with someone else and work their way over to us after a few years. It's a bit of a transition. Sometimes it's a bit more challenging. So that's the idea.
Yeah. I mean, one of the unique things I got experience is like I got started within the startup ecosystem back in like 2013. When it was Toronto scene was still it's still very relatively new. It's still developing a lot of sense, but back then there's very few companies doing what you do. I mean, Canada, we're very conservative as a nation. Right, and especially in our business practices, especially in Toronto, which is a banking center, right? We have these large little players that never really took small companies seriously until Silicon Valley style startups became popping up and started disrupting the market, and tech started eating the world.
That's right.
And now that we are seeing more and more of these kind of companies get in, right? Get into this kind of game, right? Like you said, it's like a lottery ticket, right? And one of the interesting things about startups is being the outside person working with them, right? Like one of the coolest one of the problems that I'm personally really interested in is like, how do we invest more in startups? Not just capital, but resources, right? How do you directly invest into them? And at first we thought, we thought we were trying to invent a new business model, but realizing, people like you are already been doing this, historically been practicing, right? You don't necessarily invest capital into a company. You can invest resources, advisory services, right? Human capital, like there's multiple things you can put into something to blossom it, to grow it, and get it happening. And for a startup to really blossom, like you need like a community around it, right? Different players providing different sides of things. These incubators, accelerators providing like very like regimented programs and support, co-working spaces for them to work out of, government grants to like soften the blow, right? Professional services like yours that can perform an executive level function, right, really well, right? Speaking of that executive level function, like, can you talk a little bit more about exactly what you would do for a startup? Like, what does that service look like from Thornton?
Yeah, so when we look at it from our particular group's offering, so when you talk about government funding, right? So that's an important area, and that's one of the areas. So our group is actually called RDGI, so it's Research Development Government Incentives. So it's really that full suite of what is out there, because the biggest question I get again in a startup is is money, right? So where's the funding going to come from? Once you've exhausted the friends and family, and you can bootstrap only for so long, right? Then you want to try and look at some of these programs. The problem with these programs as a startup, you're already wearing so many hats, right? And there's time, there's complexity around navigating through these programs. So if you take a look at the the research development program, the SR&ED program, very good program. I highly recommend any company that's doing activities that qualify. The problem is, do you have the time to spend to put together the applications? Do you have the time to navigate through things like documentation? Do you have the time to sit with through the CRA process and things like that? So really, when we look at what we can do for companies is shoulder a lot of that burden, right? Is the idea to offload a lot of those activities that they would normally have to do, and act as sort of their partner when it comes to these applications, when it comes to these programs. We can be there to identify the programs. So when you look at the grants landscape, it changes constantly, right? So there's government funding. Some of these programs come and go. When the budget rolls around again in March or whatever it is, these things change. So staying on top of staying on top of these programs is really important. It's hard for a startup to manage their day-to-day, let alone keep an eye on these type of programs. And then you get into the application process itself, which can vary. Some of them are not as complicated, but other ones have very complex application process, reporting requirements, things like that. So that's where we can come in and really I like the term executive function. Like we can come in and be that support, right? We can be there as much as or as little as you want us to be. So we're very flexible. So our approach is really that to help companies maximize under these programs when it comes to the government funding side. Where it comes into the other side of our offerings, it would be things like, you need to be compliant with your tax filing, right? You need to be compliant with reporting requirements. So if companies are going out to raise money, a lot of the times they need these vetted financial statements, right? Like, you want to have somebody reputable behind that, a name behind that when you're going out to do these seed raises and different things like that. So that's where we can get involved. It's really nice because we can be, as much or as little as you want us involved, right? So we're pretty flexible in our approach, and the breadth of services is nice too, that we can bring in people, right? And we can bring them in early. So we might say, hey, this company startup here in Canada, they're looking to expand in the States. We can bring in our local U.S. tax team, and we can also connect them with somebody in our Grant Thornton member firm in the U.S. and things like that. So we have that kind of ability to connect with companies and do that. But essentially, that's kind of what it looks like, is that we want to get a sense of what they need at that time, and then we can have the right people come in and help them. And so our group again is really focused on the government funding side, but there's a lot of different things that companies need to think about. Even in the early stage, you'd be surprised, companies think about, and maybe I don't need to worry about, what about, how do I save on tax, tax shelters? How do I, how do I structure my company so that, and it's that kind of, things to think about that we want to, have that conversation with them early on. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think that's so important. I've talked to so many startups, especially during the COVID time, and SEBA and all these government programs came to effect. But to apply for it, this company's like, I haven't done my taxes in 2 years.
There you go.
They haven't had time, or they didn't have the resources, the mental capacity, or they just don't have the know-how, right? I mean,
exactly.
One of the deepest problems with being a founder is the level of skills you need to develop to do the thing that you really want to do.
That's right.
You want to build this company, you want for it to solve a particular focus, but you need to know legal, but you need to know accounting.
That's right.
But you need to know how to apply for these programs. You need to know how to, submit your taxes on time, right? You know what I mean? Like who to work with, when to work with. I mean, there's so many executive functions that requires running of a corporation, right? And everyone's on this beeline course. Like, I want to be independent, be self-made, but there are resources like yourselves that you can rely and depend on, that you can kind of co-brand with. Have you felt that there's been a learning curve to educate startups and founders that, like, hey, we exist, we do this, you can come to us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things is, like, a lot of people are really good at what they're doing. So if you look at an engineer, he's great at the problem that he's trying to solve, or the idea that he has to try to actually work on the technology itself. But where they really lack is that is that business, the business savvy, right? So they're great at that side of it. But yeah, like you said, I can't remember how many times I've heard, I haven't filed my taxes yet. I haven't 2-3 years, I haven't filed tax returns, I haven't done these things, and it's those things. Yes. So absolutely, to answer your question, there is that education, because a lot of the times it's understanding what they don't know what they don't know. They need, it's kind of like, what do I need to do? And a lot of times it's that, it's that half-hour conversation, and we can kind of figure out, there's these 3 things that you need to do, that could get you back in a position that you're supposed to be, and it can set you up better for future. So there is often that education around what you need to do, and then there's an education on how we can help you do it, right? So it may be possible on your side, you just don't have the time, or you just don't have the know-how on how to do it, and sometimes those things we breed those things on a day-to-day, right? So for us to take on that function, it can be, time is money, right? So in a lot of ways, we can come in and kind of support them and help them. And so a lot of the times it's just figuring out, like, where those gaps are. Some companies are better than others, but I find the companies that are better have really good relationships with groups. They have a good legal, relationship. They have those solid relationships. They have a good relationship with their accountant, good relationship with other mentors. Those are the ones that from my experience in the last dozen or so years that I've seen, have really been successful. Is once they've established those solid relationships, it allows them to focus right on their business. It allows them to focus. They don't have to worry about, did I file my tax return? Did I clear up this legal matter? Like, I need to focus on my business. I need to bring in the right people to focus on my business. And I think there is that education. And I think you had mentioned a really good point earlier about, like, when I got started in school, and I talked to my friends about, entrepreneurship, we just didn't have that support system. We were talking, and I'm dating myself, but talking about early 2000s, you're coming out of computer science. We didn't think about entrepreneur. We thought about, getting a job, working at RIM BlackBerry back in the day, or Microsoft, or one of those things. And we didn't have the, and I'm a graduate of the University of Toronto Scarborough as well. Did the co-op program there in computer science. It's like, nice. We didn't think about it because we didn't have it. Now you have the incubators, you have the accelerators, but beyond those things, I think the accounting firms have been around, the legal firms have been around, is to make sure that you have that support system as well behind you. So I think it's gone a lot better for entrepreneurs, especially in the last dozen or so years. But we need to, I think, continue that education process for sure.
Yeah. What does that environment look like for you now? Like, looking back at it, would you have gone the entrepreneur route?
You know what? I'm jealous of entrepreneurs. I think now in a position where it's too late for me and I'm not the risk taker. But I think back then I almost certainly I took entrepreneurship in high school. In university we had ideas. It's just you didn't have that support. And I think, I think I probably would. I probably would. Maybe, would have made it big. I don't know that I could say that, but, would have had some ideas that I would have taken some sort of entrepreneurship course, like a 4th year, some sort of project. And I'm really amazed by the ideas that these young people have these days, talking about 21, 22-year-olds starting companies. It's a great mindset. And it's not just one, right? So a lot of them have exited and they go to the next one and they go to the next one. So that mindset, I think, is great to see. So yeah, I probably would have in some capacity, tried something out, maybe, with some support from like one of those university accelerators or something. It would have been great. And I think when you're younger and you don't have, the family, you don't have the other responsibilities, I think it's easier in a lot of ways to try and take those risks. And if it's supported by your school and coming out of something like that, I think we need that. I think we really need that. We need those ideas to come. One thing in Canada, we've been great on the innovation side, maybe not so much on the commercialization side, right?
Yep.
So how do you take those ideas and get them to the next level? I think that's the next step as a country. Patent. How do we keep our ideas? How do we keep it here in Canada? But I think we've gotten better. So I do like I do like what we do for startups, and I do like that mindset for sure for entrepreneurs. So.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of a support structure, right? I feel like one of the biggest things that especially campus incubators do, right? More than the mentorship and everything, it's more of the confidence building to say like, my idea matters. There's a whole infrastructure in place that if I was to do anything with this, they'll support me.
Yeah.
Right. Is that what you mean by support? Like when you talked about, you had these ideas, but you wish you had support.
I totally agree with that. Like, I think it's how, it's like somebody believes in this idea that I have, or somebody is there, and it could be a professor, it could be a specific, offering. It doesn't necessarily have to be that full suite of a cohort system, right? Where you're doing this whole, nowadays they all have it, right? Where you go through this program, but it's just that, I guess, that belief, like you said, like there's someone you can talk to about a specific idea that you have, or the other nice thing is there's others with that mindset that you can kind of collaborate with, right? So it's so often that I see talk to a company, it's like, this came out of a project, just an idea that we had as 4th year students. The 3 of us got together and we started this company. It's great, right? It's bringing people together and who may have common ideas on something, or very bright people that have something that they want to do, and there is that support behind them. So I think it can take different forms, but I think just having that, whatever it looks like, it's like having someone believe and say, hey, like this is an idea that you guys should pursue. And maybe my ideas back then weren't so great as some of the people that people are doing things now, but I think so. I think that it's getting better for sure. So.
Yeah. I mean, talking about UTSC, the UFD Scarborough campus, UFD has 13 incubators now, right? Spread across three campuses. One, almost 2. There's another one that opened up there, is at Scarborough campus, and it's crazy to think that like when my last year is when it opened up, and just by happenstance, I happened to be there. So the incubator was opened up by a professor named Dr. Gray Graffam, right, who founded this. He's a new media studies professor. When he came here, came to UFT, one of the things he requested is like, I want to teach here, but I also want to create the center, right? Nice. A center for innovation, center for experiential learning.
Yep.
And it was really his drive and his push that got this place made.
Yeah.
Right. And funny enough, the day it opened, he loves telling the story. The day it opened, I walked in. Wow. I was the first person to walk in that building. And this is 2013 when I was trying to launch a startup, right? I'm actually a failed dropout. I tried to drop out of university 3 times to create three different startups. Right. So I thought that's what I want to be. I want to be that student entrepreneur, that young person who just kills it. I created 3 companies before I turned 25. And the last one was a tech company. Right. No technical background. Mm-hmm. And the only real way I got it launched was just randomly going through campus, going through the business department, trying to find resopened. No one really helping me out. Going to the computer science department, like, how do I build apps? No one really helped me out. Kept knocking on doors. So I went into the one door that opened and stayed open, which turned out to be an incubator. which I never heard of existed.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that kind of launched my journey into it. And flash forward, my company graduated out of an incubator,
Right.
right around the time that UFD and like all the universities and Toronto itself, the sort of scene was trying to pick up. So I suddenly found myself on UFD magazines and like on pictures and like posters, and I'm like, what is going on?
You're
like,
famous. Yeah.
I'm a solid D student. You know what I mean? Like, I never, you know what I mean? I never got any academic acclaim, but now that just because I have the guts to pursue an idea, or I have this idea that I just keep going after, month after month, right? This huge institution is now promoting me, right? And it's just like the validation that gives you that, holy shit, this idea, it might not be the greatest, but like this, if a university like UFT sort of believe in it, they're willing to take that chance to be like, yo, this is what UFT entrepreneurship looks like, and a picture of views included. Holy shit.
Yeah, it gives you that. Yeah, it gives you that backing, right? It gives you that support that you feel like what you're doing, even if it's not a fully validated idea, but you have somebody behind you. And so you were hustling even years ago before the term became
absolutely
popular. So no, that's interesting. Yeah, so in mine's like I said, like 03, 04, there was forget incubators, accelerators. There was nothing even. There might have been something entrepreneurship related, but you're talking about kind of the old school entrepreneurship mentality. And I did a course in high school for entrepreneurship, and I think my idea was like an internet service provider or something, so this is like late 90s we're talking about it. It's like, so yeah, it's come a long way, and I haven't been back to the campus for a while, but I can only imagine like things are only getting bigger and better, and you're going to see success stories come out of these things. So that's it's good to hear. So
I mean, I was doing a talk at a high school it was a few years back, and one of the things that like I said even stuck with me even, right? It's like, why you should think of university. I was talking to parents. Why you should think of universities as a perfect environment to create a business, right? Or start a business, or even get into that mentality of businesses, right? So one, you develop skills, yes, but two, you also have like university literally means universal city. Right. It originates from a Greek word, and it's university is meant to have everything a city would in a micro environment. So you have, all these stores, retail environments, you have the academic centers, you have all this stuff compressed together, but you also have, on average, 15,000 students.
That's right.
Right? All within the same kind of demographics, all within the same kind of trajectory, all ambitious, all validated to be smart and, ambitious people who are also like, filtered by economic standing because they can afford university or have the mental capacity to like, qualify for the grant programs that to get them in that environment. So you have this huge, value set of people you can experiment ideas with, you can build with, have partners with, sell to, right? Get validation from to really generate your business. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of, a lot of innovative some of the most innovative companies have come out of universities. Talent pool, the validation from testing factors, the facilities to be used of, and also the time sink, right? You trade kind of your studies towards a company, but like, the value prop slides that way, right? But like now that we're seeing this innovation ecosystem, like, if you look at everything from the government of Canada to the province, the entire country is geared towards innovation being the answer to our economic recovery.
That's right.
Job creation, economic recovery, all the income growth is projected to come from innovation. And now the government has there's always been like a generalized attempt towards innovation. We have these superclusters, AI superclusters, industry superclusters spread out across the nation. But now it's like, holy shit. We really got to double down on this.
That's right.
Homegrown talent is going to be everything. We can't rely on foreign partners opening up branches of their companies here. We can't rely on these on like these old world kind of post pre-COVID kind of companies.
That's right.
To expand and survive. We need to grow new novel business. Right.
Exactly.
And you see this like ecosystem kind of collapsing and coordinating amongst each other, right? And everyone kind of trying to everyone's kind of like geared towards its cause.
That's right.
And what I like is that what I'm seeing is like like innovators, and by extension even academics are like we're like the counterculture of today.
Like
it suddenly became cool to be a founder.
That's right.
Have that
flipped,
bio.
it's completely changed. Yeah.
Before it used to be like, you're kind of a fool. You're gonna risk your career, your life, your
what
money.
are you doing? Yeah.
Yeah, you're sitting in your basement baking this thing, but now it's like a culture. You become a cultural icon.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Right.
Maybe it's gone too. I don't say it's gone too much the other way, but sometimes you do see that too, right? Where it's like there's some people maybe who shouldn't be doing entrepreneurship and they don't have the best ideas, or you're getting into a market that's really saturated. But that mindset is still there, and I think we need to encourage that, right? Because we want people. There's people sitting at home with great ideas, right? And that's how we grow. That's how we grow as a company, as a country.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. In the pandemic, that's what we've seen. Like you've seen while the year hasn't been the year that anyone anticipated or wanted, there have been some stories coming out in terms of people that have been able to be successful and find solutions. And you think about doctor's visits, and you think about that whole world. I've got clients that are doing the virtual visits, right? Software like that what we're using right now. You think about Zoom. You think about education, right? Being able to do things online. We've had to quickly adapt, right? But we've found solutions to problems that maybe we didn't anticipate, but we've been able to do that during the pandemic. And who would have ever thought, right? If there's a pandemic 20 years ago, how much worse it would have been. But people have actually been able to adapt and innovate in this time, which is remarkable. I saw a company yesterday, actually an Ottawa-based company that just raised a whole bunch of money. They're doing real-time delivery, and you think about that industry and being able to get goods, not so much the Amazon, a little bit different than the Amazon model, but getting things to people, on time and so there are always solutions to be had. I feel like, and there's ideas, and it's funny when when technology rolls out, when the iPad first rolled out, and I was one of the first ones to say, who's going to use this, right? Who's going to, when you think about like who's going to use the iPad, but there are ideas to be had. There's things that we can't even thought about that are coming, and that's why we need to foster entrepreneurship and innovation, because those ideas are with the young people, right? They're in the universities. I really like the example you used about the university being that kind of you've got that pool of people that have common-minded ideas. It's how do we bring them together, and we are seeing that. We are definitely seeing that more and more than seen 10 years ago, and we want those ideas to turn into innovation. We want them to turn into jobs, and we want them to turn into, that's how we build our economy. And I really applaud what the government has done during this time. Is there was some concern when things hit that those things may dry up, and how do we promote these programs, and how do we get funding to the people that need it? But they haven't shied away, right? So they've done everything in their power with the subsidies to help the startups, right? They've done everything with clusters, continue fostering this COVID-specific funding that they've done. That we've seen a lot of that type of mindset, right? And it starts at the top. And so, and then when the example we talked about of having somebody behind you, it has to start there, right? It has to be, everybody has to be on board. Kind of fostering something like that, and I think we'll be better for it. We'll see what happens in 2021, but I think while again it has been a challenging year, I think there have been some success stories for sure. So
yeah. Cool. I mean, one of the cool things about Thornton is we work with a lot of regional innovation centers, and we work with a lot of what is it, incubators and accelerators across region. And we're seeing more and more pop up. Like what I love seeing is municipalities, entire municipalities like Barrie, Sudbury, Thunder Bay.
Yeah.
The entire municipality, they'll even have a department for innovation.
That's right.
A lot of these small towns now have a entrepreneur residence.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
In the city, right? Trying to figure out how to promote companies to form, right? And run the city as almost like an innovation center, right?
That's right.
And I know, working with all these innovation partners, I see Thornton's name everywhere, right? Like, you're partnering up with these innovation centers. You're working at an executive function at such an early stage, right in the boots on the ground. You're putting resources right where the companies are forming out of these centers, right? How has that yielded return for you? Like, how has that been? Like, was it systematic? Like, did you guys go all in? Like, we're gonna double down on this and start supporting the centers, or was that like an organic reach out that you started getting feedback from and started doubling down? Like, how was that growth?
Yeah, I think it would be more the latter, right? It's been more sort of organic in the sense that we've had some relationships that have kind of cultivated, right? So over our successful, so we've had some client success stories come out of some of these groups, and then it's sort of, just through either through word of mouth or, you know, startups talk, right? Companies have similar challenges that are similar stages, and they're like, oh yeah, so what do you recommend for this, and what do you suggest we do, and companies start talking, and that's where we can provide value because we can come in, and I've done this many times, come in and do like a presentation or a talk about a certain thing, and you'd be surprised how many companies again have those needs, have those challenges, right? So in a lot of ways it's been great just to be in front of these type of companies at that stage, and provide and say, and the nice thing is we can bring in different groups. We can say, hey, like we've done for example, we've done presentations called business fundamentals. So just as the name suggests, like at that stage you need to incorporate, you need to, what are your requirements around paying tax, HST, how do you get started with government programs? You'd be surprised how valuable companies find these types of informative presentations, because you think it's a lot of stuff that you would expect companies to know, but in a lot of cases, again, there's even if they can take away one or two bits of information, it's something for them to think about, and it allows it keeps that conversation going with us, right? So and I think part of it too is being patient sometimes, right? So you may go into one of these centers and companies are very early, but I've had this happen so many times where a company reach back out even in a year and say, hey, we connected at this presentation you talked about. Now we're at a stage, where we're looking for that. So there is that, patient element, and it may not all come because companies grow at different stages and things happen. You have to be mindful of that. But I think we've had a lot of success where we've been able to come into these different organizations, different accelerators, incubators, present. Some of them are, very different focus, different sectors, different, technologies. So we have kind of the right people coming into these groups. But I think that's where it's been valuable. For example, one of the groups that I'm involved with is one of the Health Innovation Hub at U of T. It's one of the 13 that you mentioned, and acting as almost a mentor there. So I've come in to do some presentations, built up a good relationship with the founding team there, and so there's also like a lot of referral opportunities that come. So which is for me is really valuable, just having the ability to talk, even if I my thing is always, I'm not going in to sell you a service. My thing is I'll spend half an hour with you and understand the needs of your business. Again, understand how can we help you, and it may not be today, it may be 6 months from now, but I want to understand, where are you with the company and how can we help you. So just having that ability to have that kind of network, that referral network, is very valuable, because you just don't know, where it's going to lead, right? And it's mutually beneficial because I can help you, and then that company can say, hey, we've got another company, my friend is a startup here, another company that's looking for services, and that's why it's important for us to be there. It's important for us to provide value so that we have that reputation behind us in the market. And like you said, you might see Grant Thornton's name sponsoring different things, but it's not just we don't want to just be there as a namesake, right? Like, oh yeah, this is Grant Thornton. We're just a name. We've provided some money. We find that actually that is not the value. It's not just to stick our name on an ad or a banner or something like that. It's more, where can we have those real conversations, right? Where can we spend the time, and they value that because they know it's like you're getting some time with us. A lot of cases it's someone from a senior capacity. We find that startups are they really like that, and they're motivated, I would say, to when they could say, hey, yeah, we've talked to someone here and they like our idea, or they can help us, so they can see some value in us as a startup. It's really nice to see. So
yeah.
I
mean that's a very astute way of thinking about it, right? Like having these conversations with companies, getting to know them, relationship building, like it's exceeding the environment, right? You're building those relationships. But going back to like through your journey, like have you come across any innovative company that screams out at you? You're like, whoa, that is a cool company. Like, you have a top 3 list?
Top 3 list, yeah. You're putting me on the spot here, but
yeah.
I think
what sticks out?
Because the company I was mentioning to you the other day is Bridget, is a construction software company.
For a while,
very unique story. Really like working with them in terms of it's nice because you see a company it's nice for me. It's a software company, but in such an interesting sector, right? You're looking at the construction sector, and years ago you would have never thought, like, how would you put software and the construction industry together, right? So I really like that. I like that as an example because it shows that there are ways that we can innovate that we probably haven't even thought about years ago. I've got clients, for example, in legal tech. I didn't, years ago, if you told me legal tech was a thing, I wouldn't even know what that was. But working with some companies out of the legal innovation zone at Ryerson, there's a whole legal tech division, right? And there's these companies that are doing innovative things in a sector that's probably very archaic when you look at paperwork and you're looking at things, insurance technology, right? Your companies that are making insurance claims, digitalizing things, making technology. So that would probably be an example. Another great example of a company is a company called Pitstop. I don't know if you've heard of them. Sorry, a company that's doing so essentially what they're able to do is monitor things that are going on in your vehicle real time. So, and sending you diagnosis, say, hey, like, your oil level is low, or, you need to get this thing checked. So it's a constant monitor. You can see the value of something like that, right? Where you get a ping on your phone saying, hey, like this thing is diagnosis and, you need to get this checked, or you need to get, and so they've really come a long way. A company that's really doing some innovative things with machine learning. So, and artificial intelligence to be able to take, things about your fuel level and analyzing things in your car that, again, years ago you wouldn't even think would be possible, right? And so, and then you just think about the application of that sort of technology, for anyone. It's for people especially that are, think about an older generation where you're not having to worry about things like that, or your vehicle's getting older and you're worried about things like that. So you could just see the usage of that type of technology. So that's probably another example. I'll probably have to come back to you with thinking about another great example. But the other companies will probably be in the legal tech sector. There's a few, but I can come back with you some names. But that sector really sticks out to me today for just again, it kind of boggles my mind what technology is able to do in an area where it was really, probably old school. Like there wasn't anything that you could think could have been done years ago, and then they're making, they're adapting technology to make it work in that sort of sector. So
absolutely. We actually had the previous one of the previous directors of the legal innovation zone on our podcast, and like that was so surreal, right? Because it came out of nowhere. I didn't realize, like there's such a niche for legal tech, right? You would think like such an industry would be like so pen and paper, like it would take a while for it to develop, but there's a whole innovation center built on transforming that industry, right? And that's really what the power of these, like especially hyper specialized incubators are, right? Like it concentrates, almost like it's a consortium, right? It concentrates a level of research and development into a certain sector, right? And find people who have a common interest, common goal, and provide that mutual support structure for that.
Absolutely. And actually, as you were speaking, the one that does come to mind is a Epilogue Wills, actually, is a wills company that we've been working with. And so it's the online wills process. So something is, you're thinking about, when you get older, you're thinking about will, you're thinking about lawyer, you have to go into lawyer office, you got, paperwork. They've digitized the whole process. It's online. I think it's, it's in a matter of minutes that you can generate a will, a legal document, right? And all that's done through technology. It is mind-boggling. So that's another company that. So I think one of the the great things I love about my job is just being able to being at the forefront of technology, just seeing what's happening and what we're able to do. And that's just there's a lot of other companies obviously that we would work with, but it's just being able to see that and see the even in traditional industries where there maybe wasn't a solution before, now finding solutions to everyday problems just through technology. And I think AI and machine learning are a really big part. IoT, there's some game changers there for sure in terms of technology. So
any technologies transforming or radically transforming your industry?
Actually, yeah. In the process of when we talk about accounting, the accounting world, there's a company out there that's doing AI for audits. So when you think about the accounting industry, and again, another industry that's been traditionally, not as digitalized and not, in terms of technology and things like that, that is something that's coming. So having a way to, take on a full company audit through a digitalized AI process is something that we're seeing, and it is transforming the industry. And I think that's something, to look out for, and more ways to kind of automate some of these typically manual processes from an accounting perspective. And even in our group, we're always looking at ways to innovate. How can we make life easier for our clients? How can we, provide them tools to, make things like reporting easier? How can we make them, make the process of, as much as we're here to support them, if we can even give them more, digital, avenues to do things, we're all for that. But yeah, we are definitely seeing things in the accounting space, where I would say stay tuned for sure around stuff that's.
Yeah. I mean, talking about that, the CRA made headlines a few years ago because they implemented an AI engine into their into their auditing processes.
Yeah.
Right. And now, recently it came out saying that CRA is now going to start implementing, the Canadian Revenue Agency is going to start implementing their taxes. They're going to do it for you.
Yeah.
They're going to pull it from different data sources that they're already using to fact check you, and they're just going to when tax season comes up, say, hey, this is how much you owe, and pre-calculate for you. And if there's any adjustments, any changes, then you submit. And their hope is to prevent the lag time in people self-reporting and aid that process over. But what I like about this, a lot of people have reservations to this, but what I like about this, it kind of changes our institutions almost, right?
Yeah.
Right. Especially the tax service that's such a gets a bad rep for being a negative connotation for being a hunter. Like you're being hunted by the tax man, right? That's in our lexicon so much. It's what I'm interested in is how technology is going to change the way we interface with our institutions. By providing more transparency, by providing more direct lines of communication, real-time communication, more informatics solutions, right? And I think it's going to change the society's fabric as well, right? So I'm excited for Canada.
Yeah, I think we've seen that on our side because we interface with the CRA a lot, and things like they've gone away from you can imagine still using fax systems to now they've got, for example, they've got a portal online, right, where companies can submit and they can collaborate on information sharing. Right, so that's been a great addition. They've started to adapt video conferencing tools because again, everybody's remote these days, and where CRA used to typically, come on site to do, reviews and things like that. Those are happening virtually. We have heard of, and we're not privy to a lot of the stuff they're doing internally, but a lot of their screening processes, AI. Coming into play to look at, things like your documentation or looking at screening a lot of your financial data, right? And if you think about it, your T4 information, the CRA already has, has all that, right? So how can, I can definitely see, now typically, governments are a bit slower adopters in terms of technology when it comes to, obviously concerns around security and those types of things. But I think there's a lot of room, even if you think about your own personal tax, being able to access your My Account online, that's a fairly recent accomplishment there when you look at it. So, but I think that's where we're headed. I think again, the biggest thing is the adoption tends to happen at a bit of a slower pace when we look at governments and things like that. But I think it's coming. And actually, and as we were talking, I was going through the previous podcast, and one of the gentlemen you spoke with is Matthew at New Vote.
Yep.
Was the company. So I'm working with Matthew right now, and that's again a transformative technology when you think about voting online. And it's the concept, you think is simple, but it's got so much complexity behind it, right? And when you think about just the regulations and things like that, and obviously everything that you're seeing in the US now with voting and all of that, but that one also springs to mind when you talk about just, I guess, a kind of a common connection that we have, but also just an intriguing use of technology where you may not have, kind of thought about it. So it's intriguing.
Matthew's actually a great friend. We actually catch up once a week. We get a call.
Nice. Okay.
And man, what he's doing is so crazy, right? Yeah. He's trying to modernize democracy.
Yeah, it's
right. And and especially in such a fragile state, with what's happening in the States now with Trump and contesting elections.
Oh yeah.
And talking about pretty much throwing away the election technology that's being utilized is really through a wrench in the industry. But he's still championing a way of saying how can we put technology towards championing democracy, protecting it. Right, by making it easier and more transparent for people to utilize. Yeah. And I think that kind of level of thinking is important. And that's really why I love working within the innovation industry. Right? Yeah, you get these cool ideas. Yeah, there's money being made, but you also get these people who are so passionate about this problem that
Yeah.
that just it's beyond them. If they can actually solve it, if they actually provide value to it, it's gonna give so much value to so many people.
Yeah.
And when you talk about elections, I mean, that's a forefront, like that's like the hallmark of our society, of Western
Exactly.
society.
Yeah,
Right?
and I'm also amazed that when you talk about the passion, like it's like oftentimes I love to hear the story. I love to hear like how did this idea come about, right? And it's always and so many times it's a personal experience, or in the health. I've heard so many times in the health sector. I had a grandparent, or I had a family member that was that had these issues, and we were looking for a way to make this better for them, right? And there's that personal connection. So there's all of it. Most of the time you're going to find they're doing this for some. There's a reason behind it, right? It's not something that came out of the blue. There's some driving force behind it, either a personal experience or something they've personally gone through, a personal problem that they have. So many times they said, I was trying to trying to sell online, or I was trying to do this, and there was no easy way to do this. And I was like, let me solve this problem, right? And that's great to see, because if you're having that problem, the chances are many of us are having that problem, and they're making life easier for us through technology and being able to solve that problem. So when you talk about passion, like I see it almost on a daily basis. You see that passion in the problem that they're trying to solve, and we need to foster that. We need to continue seeing that for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught that episode, but Matt in particular, right? Like one of the tidbits that came out of this episode, and one of the reasons why I love doing this is exactly what you said, the anecdotal, like the behind the scenes story, behind the people, right? That's driving them. And with Matt, like with elections, like he talks about a time when he was like in middle school, he was at a house party. And this during election time, so all these elections happening, and none of the people there cared about. And he was a conscientious person. He's like, he's well read. He wanted to go into journalism, right?
I'm just gonna turn my light on. Sorry.
No worries.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm back.
Yeah, no worries.
Brighter.
Yeah. Right. And he wanted to go into journalism, and like and anyways, it's his house party. And during elections time, all this stuff is going on. The girls at this party whose house he was at, right? Yeah. Turned on America's Got Talent, the game show that was going on, right? And they got their cell phones, and they were punching in by text their votes on who they liked. And the whole party was like themed around this, like the watch party. And he was like, man, these girls are here voting for all these all these people on America's Got Talent, but like they have no idea there's an election going on. Right. But this piece of technology and like this interaction got them engaged. Yeah. And in middle school, he's thinking about like, what if elections were that easy? Like, would people be more engaged? Right. If they have much more direct lines of voting on things, of making things more immediate, right? Like promoting more direct democracy. Yeah. Right. Like and he's had thinking about it since middle school. Yeah. And he ended up becoming he ended up become a teacher, traveling the world teaching, and he became a journalist and did that like for a while. And throughout this whole adult life, since middle school, he's been thinking about this problem and then refining it until he one day snapped, I gotta work on this.
I gotta do it.
I gotta do it.
Yeah. It's I've seen that. I've heard that. That's one a great example, but I've heard that kind of story so many times. It's like, there's this problem, I need to solve it, and I'm jumping in, right, and I'm doing it. And I think you need to have that, right, that drive and that passion, because there's a purpose behind what you're doing. Otherwise you're not maybe going to go in with that right mentality to give it your all, right? And so that's it's great, and they're solving the problems for the rest of us. That's the way I look at entrepreneurs. It's like you're making, now I don't have to go to my lawyer's office anymore. I can do a will online, or I can it's that example, and I think it's great. So
any of these companies you ran into whose product or service that you directly personally use?
I think the will one I am going to. So that's something I've been thinking about for a little while, and I'm like, I'm going to say, I think that is an example. The pit stop example, I can definitely see myself using. I think it's going to be something that might become more commonplace when you bring it into vehicles and things like that. That would be another example. A lot of the ones are, a lot of other companies are, more enterprise solutions. So probably indirectly we will end up using it, whether it comes to to us in the form of a firm, software, something that we're going to end up using as a firm or something like that. So I could definitely see it. I could definitely see that happening more and more, and I think it's going to happen more and more. I just think that it's going to be things that you're going to end up using, and probably either directly or indirectly. So there's probably something that's happening in the back end that you don't realize. It's probably one of my clients that's doing that, or it's somebody. And I'm a big fan of like Dragon's Den, things like that. So there you do see a lot of times a lot of those more personal type products, things like that. Since I'm more focused on the the tech sector and stuff like that, sometimes these things take a little bit more time to get into the market and stuff like that. But yeah, or the other example actually is as I'm talking, I'm thinking of these things. There's an app that I use all the time for. So one of my clients called Reebee. So they do the shopping. So the app, you go shopping list, coupons. It's great, right? Like if you're and years ago you're like, oh yeah, I have to clip coupons from a newspaper. You think about that whole technology coming to a digital format. So that's something definitely that that I like to see. And everything is on our phone these days, right? We don't want to be carrying around things. We want to have everything. Our phone is turned into our hub for everything. So you're gonna see more and more things. I think it's just get in there and just get integrated in. So yeah, there's definitely, to answer your question, definitely that I have, and I think more to come for sure. So.
So I'm gonna lead this with one final anecdotal, like a story from you, like a qualitative story for you. One of the coolest things about what you do is because you work with so many different regions across so many different industries, sectors, and with all these incubators, you're going to see a very wide, like God view of like the landscape of innovation, right? Especially in this region, right? What is something that sticks out to you? Is there a particular region that's like producing a lot of cool things? Is there a particular sector that's like, holy crap, right? Is it like a small town that's like randomly producing a lot of talent or drawing people in? Like, it's something that you can share with us.
I think off the top, I think the Kitchener Waterloo region, that's the one that sticks out to me, just in terms of what they've been able to do, that corridor, just in terms of technology. So the company I mentioned, Pit Stop, coming out of there, Bridget, coming out of there, Reebee, actually, all of the other companies that I mentioned have all come out of that region. I think it's a combination of what they've been able to do out of the university. So looking at the University of Waterloo, and even Laurier, and then looking at a lot of their programs, like Communitech, which Grant Thornton was involved with in the past, Velocity. I think they've done a really good job of fostering innovation in the sector. And you think about them, they kind of refer to them as kind of the Silicon Valley of the North in a lot of ways, and you do hear that moniker. It's been a hub for me, just because of my background. Like, I do see a lot of interesting people, interesting companies in that sector, and then you even see some of the big players there, right? You look at like Google, and you look at they got big companies like D2L, and they've done really well. So it's probably not it's probably more of the obvious answer, but it's just one that sticks out to me in terms of a sector that's done really well in Canada, and one that we want to continue to kind of promote and probably emulate in a lot of ways, right? I think a lot of the other regions can get there, but to your early point, like I've got clients in obviously where I'm in Ottawa, in Kingston, in Kingston, Ontario. You don't think of technology companies. We've got some interesting companies there. I've got some companies up north in companies in North Bay and Sudbury, and our group is across the country. So in Atlantic Canada, there's some really, really interesting companies doing things coming out of the Dalhousie and those universities out there. And then likewise in the West, you think about Vancouver. Even other parts of BC and things like that. There's some really, really interesting pockets of innovation. But I think what KW and kind of the Kitchener region is doing, just again, I'm biased because I'm the software guy, but I think is a really good story. That I think has resonated even down south. Like I know there's people talk about going down to the valley and things like that, but I know they a lot of companies have actually we're actually affiliated with a group that helps U.S. companies who are coming into Canada, and then specifically have targeted KW region. So a lot of them have set up R&D shops in that region for that reason. Just the great support system, a lot of the Canadian programs, that collaboration, and they have that reputation. So. That probably sticks out to me. So,
I mean, so cool. I'm sure you're learning a lot from working with these companies and talking to them, right? Man, thank you so much for coming on. All right.
Likewise, thanks for having
and sharing information. Stick around. We'll do a quick debrief.
Sure.
But guys, check out Thornton LLP and Naren if you need advice on your accounting needs of your startup.
Yeah. Thanks, Ravi, and it was great being on.